What's going on, everybody? This is John Jink Gaming on the mic here, coming at you with a brand new episode of the NCSL here on College Football Revamped with the most recent NCAA game. We're already almost halfway through the inaugural college football season of the NCSL, and we've seen a little bit of everything so far, but at that halfway point, we start to ask the tough questions. Who is a contender? Who is a pretender? And then more importantly, who has that ability to go to the college football playoff and who's going to bowl games around the country? So gonna be some very exciting action this week. We do have a lot of games, such as obviously that Red River rivalry. We're gonna see that here today. Notre Dame is in action. We got some other top 25 action as well, like Auburn and Ole Miss. They're gonna go up against each other. That's a major top 25 matchup. And just in general, a lot of really good games to really watch out for here in this particular episode, and I just hope you guys are ready for it. We're going to check out the conference standings towards the end of this episode as well, so stick around for the entire thing because there is a fair amount of college football action in this episode. So that being said, guys, hope you're excited for it, and if you are, make sure you go ahead, smack that like button for me. Hit that subscribe button as well if you do happen to be brand new to the channel. And let's go ahead and dive right into it, right into the college football action. Let's go, baby. So let's go ahead and get the week number 7 action officially underway, and no better way to get it started than the Red River rivalry. Now, these two teams might be a little bit down, but this doesn't change the fact that this is one of the best rivalry games in all of college football between Oklahoma and Texas. At least played on a neutral field. They always play this at the Cotton Bowl, which I actually thought that they played this at Jerry's World, but I might actually be wrong. Those of you that may or may not be Oklahoma or Texas fans, y'all let me know down in the comments if anything that I'm saying is not completely accurate or not. But Texas is going to get things started. Got a nice little lead here. 14-3 is your score as Adam Allen actually does a nice job flipping that flip ball out onto the perimeter and finds Trey Dixon for a gain of 6 yards as Texas looks to really build upon this lead right now as Adam Allen dropping back. He's got a ton of time, but he throws an interception. How do you have all that time in the pocket to make a decision and that's what you choose to do? Absolutely crazy in my mind. So Oklahoma really uses that as a spark for themselves to really start the process of coming back in this game. They actually take the lead. But speaking of close games, so we do have a studio update though, as Michigan, they are up on they're losing to Akron. They are actually losing to the Akron Zip. So it's crazy out here, man. But Oklahoma, they take that spark and they are going to will themselves into a Red River rivalry victory. But now, that being said, we get into some of the other games that are happening around the NCSL, such as number 13 Notre Dame going on the road to take on one of the most disappointing teams that we've seen in the NCSL this season, West Virginia. This is a preseason, I believe, number 16 team in the country, and they are 1-4. 1-5, well, it's looking real long shot-ish to even make a bowl game. So I don't know how West Virginia is going to necessarily do it, but they got to find a way to win this game. They got to get their season back on track somehow. Notre Dame, going to be no easy task for them whatsoever. Although West Virginia is going to get the scoring started here, though, as Dan Bishop is going to open up the country roads, as they will get the first scores of the game here in his battle against Notre Dame. But the Fighting Irish, well, it's in their name. You already know they're going to be fighting back, as Jay Brigham already has a reception touchdown in this game. We'll see if they go back to him. No, the fullback is going to get a little bit of love. Landon Hogan. He's going to Hulk Hogan his way into the end zone. And I'm sure not the expert somewhere out there smiling, knowing that we did see a fullback touchdown. For you, if you know, you know. You already know what time it is. But West Virginia still keeping it close, though. Still a very competitive game. Could still go either way. And that's even with Notre Dame's offense actually playing pretty okay. You know, we saw them sputter to a degree when we see them play against other conference opponents like Vanderbilt or Northwestern. You know, teams that they should be blowing out. They should be blowing out this team too, but they have not. But starting to pull away here, maybe just a little bit, 30-20 being your score. But late in the third quarter, though, West Virginia, they have a chance to make this just a one-score game. And then, you know, if you want to make a one-score game in the fourth quarter, anything goes. Anything can happen. So here they are in the fourth quarter, goal line opportunity. Gotta find a way to score, and they do that as Antoine Robinson able to find his way into the end zone. That's a touchdown for the Mountaineers. And not only do they get it close, but next drive, they actually have a shot to take the lead. Imagine that when we started this ball game, the way that, you know, Notre Dame was perceived compared to West Virginia. But here the Mountaineers are, first and goal inside the 10-yard line. And sure enough, Dan Bishop almost got them into the end zone. They're going to mark him down at like the 1-yard line. Now a second and goal opportunity, and Chad Williams will get into the end zone. Notre Dame down on West Virginia, and the upset alert bells, they are going off everywhere. Last chance for the Fighting Irish, got into the red zone, but they try to pitch it, and it gets deflected. And West Virginia, they are going to get a favorable bounce. The Mountaineers able to run out the rest of the clock, and they get 13 unanswered points in the fourth quarter to pull off a shocking upset against the Fighting Irish. But now we check in on the Clemson Tigers, who just got themselves back into the top 25. They took a pretty shocking loss earlier in the season against North Texas. This is a top 10 team when this season started, but that loss to North Texas was so bad, it actually knocked them out. They just now got back into the top 25, obviously. Speaking of teams that should be in the top 25, though, North Carolina should certainly get some consideration as well. They're 3-1, very good football team, as Clemson will tie things up here in the first quarter against Gary Williams. Gary Williams will get the scoring started for the Clemson Tigers here in Death Valley. As now, North Carolina trying to answer back here, trying to deal with this crowd noise, but going to actually run it out on the perimeter instead. Reese is going to slide down, but inside the 5-yard line, though. They can extend this lead here as they go to the tailback, who runs it up the gut, and the Tar Heels, they extend their lead to a 17-7 ball game. Now, in the second half, though, Clemson really needing to wake up if they want to remain in the top 25. It's certainly not looking good for them in that regard, as North Carolina was able to add yet another touchdown on the board off screen. Now a 2-possession ball game. Really got to score in this goal line situation, and that is the last thing that you want to go out and do right now. You do not want to throw an interception right now. What are we doing? I have no idea, but it allows North Carolina to capture some more of that momentum. Their offense is really humming along pretty well. They actually will decide to go for the 2-point conversion, even though I don't necessarily feel it's that necessarily. And now Clemson doesn't have to go for 2-point conversions all the time. They could go for an extra point if they choose to do so. And speaking of that, Clemson trying to drive down the length of the field in the red zone, looks over the middle of the field, finds his receiver eventually. That is going to be a first down for the Clemson Tigers, as Darnell Rogers just now getting his second catch of the day, making it first and goal as Clemson scores on the board once again as Gary Williams gets his second touchdown of the day. They will decide to go for 2 in order to cut this to a 14-point game. Can Clemson convert? And it looks, oh, he had it in his hands. He had it in his hands, but unfortunately, he literally fumbles the bag. He drops that pass. So it's a little bit out of reach now for the Clemson Tigers. 39-20 is going to be your score, but they're going to show a lot of pride here. They're not going to give up that easily. And speaking of not giving up that easily, Akron is not going away. They have a chance to pull this off, as Michigan only has a 3-point lead with 4 minutes left to go in the game. But that being said, we will see one top 25 team lose in this episode. That is Clemson losing to the North Carolina Tar Heels. But now, that being said, we got a little bit of a double box update with Alabama, Ole Miss, and Auburn all going to work. South Alabama trying to show that maybe they're a little bit better than what their record shows. 2-3, but 2 of those 3 losses are in a very difficult conferences. New Look Sun Belt Conference, one of the more difficult conferences to play in the country, at least in terms of toughness of schedule, in terms of conference slate. But South Alabama in the second quarter, they're going to take the lead. They will actually take the lead against Alabama. And this is what we kind of saw from Alabama last week, getting off to just a really slow start here. And they really don't get going here to the last few minutes of the first half, which is similar to that Southern Miss game. Just get some nice runs. Josh Maxwell being one of them. He's going to have a 16-yard carry. As now, 2nd and 12 coming up. It's going to be a rollout to the left-hand side. Fires, and it's going to find Ryan Steffens for a gain of 19 yards. Meanwhile, 2nd and 5 coming up is going to be, it's going to be a run up the middle. Curtis West is actually going to keep the football here, and it gives Alabama the lead going into halftime. However, South Alabama still with that short lead in the fourth quarter. Again, could go either way. Alabama clinging on for pure life as they're trying to show they are still a top 25 worthy squad, as Curtis West is going to line up under center. Looks, got plenty of time, could make himself a sandwich, and fires a bullet over the middle of the field to Adam Lamb. And now Alabama has the lead, putting the pressure on the Jaguars of Southern Alabama. Down by 4, going to the tailback, and this tailback, he really wants to find his way. Andy Kelly actually is somebody who is an FCS transfer. He transferred in from North Carolina A&T State, fun fact of the day, but he can't will his team to victory, it seems like, as Alabama gonna get an interception late and almost returns it to the crib. Gets caught from behind by the quarterback. So all Curtis West really has to do here is really just run out the rest of his clock, but it looks like instead they're going to use this to get some style points. William Jones will find his way into the end zone. That is another score here for the Crimson Tide. But before we confirm that score, we do get another studio update on the Michigan-Akron game. And it turns out Michigan, they are going to survive against Akron, just a 3-point win. But Alabama's margin of victory was a little bit bigger than that, though, as they do beat Southern Alabama 24-13, even though Andy Kellen was named player of the game. However, Ole Miss is going to be taking on Auburn. This is one of 2 top 25 matchups that we have going on here in week number 7. And both of these teams are in the Dixie division of the Sun Belt. Whoever wins this game could really control their own destiny in terms of going to the conference championship game. So a very big matchup here in week number 7. We'll see who wants it more, as Terrence Manson, he's not going down without a fight, and Manson is going to be able to rattle off a 36-yard run. Absolutely incredible. Puts Ole Miss in the red zone. They'll look to capitalize as Manson, he'll keep the ball himself and he will rush his way into the end zone, as that will be a early touchdown here for the Ole Miss Rebels. Makes it 7-0 game. However, after that we start to see really both defense really come out and play, as we don't see much more scoring in that first half of action after that, as Auburn, you might have not known this from the first drive of the game, but they've really put a lot of pressure on Terrence Manson, really made him make some pretty questionable decisions, including this long sack. Not only takes a massive sack, but he puts the ball on the ground, so can't even punt the football away to try to flip field position. Auburn now with a chance to tie the game with 1 minute left here in the first half. Looking around, fires to the right hand side and finds Richard West by the pylon, and he's able to get both feet down as well as make sure that that football was across the pylon. Tie ball game here between Auburn and Ole Miss. Could have a classic on our hands, as Auburn trying to come out here and take the lead when we get into the second half of action. But the forwards maybe should have done a little something different, but it makes you feel any better. At least they're not Texas Tech, who just lost to Tulsa. Now, that being said, coming back to our game, jumping into the fourth quarter, actually, still a tied ball game at 10 apiece, but that will not last much longer, though, as that will be taken right to the crib by Alfred Flynn. Alfred Flynn being that guy, transferring in from Sacramento State, and he just gave the Ole Miss Rebels the lead. I think they're better than the number 20 team in the entire country, and it looks like Terrence Manson, while not playing the best of games today, 12 for 19, 147 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Not the prettiest stat line, obviously. He does lead Ole Miss to yet another win, and the Rebels are now 6-1. With that being said, we get into the 3:30 kickoff games, and a little bit of love for Air Force as we get another nationally televised game. They're going to be taking on Colorado State in what could be a pretty a conference matchup that has some implications out there in the Mountain West Mountain Division. And this, of course, has one of your custom coaches, Dion Kirby. He's the offensive coordinator for Air Force, but the Air Force is being grounded right now. They are being grounded early on by Colorado State, who's doing a nice job with that ball control, already has a touchdown lead. Could make this a 2-score lead, depending on how the next few plays turns out for the Colorado State offense. And sure enough, a couple of plays later, Colorado State, they will go in their option attack, and Eric McBride, he chooses to keep it and finds his way into the end zone. Colorado State, they look poised to try to go ahead and run away and win this game. However, before we go on the rest of the game, we'll check in on Arizona State and Utah State. And Arizona State coming off that win against Utah in the previous episode, they are now taking on a winless Utah State game. That should be a given for the Sun Devils to try to finish this first half of the season strong. Now, jumping into the second quarter of action, Colorado State yet again driving. Air Force desperately needs a stop here if they want to get it to where they will not be ran off this field. If they score on this possession, if it's a touchdown, it could be barbecue chicken early on. But Eric McBride tries to throw this ball up into double coverage, and that was exactly what Air Force needed. They needed that turnover. Now Air Force, they got to go to work. What does Dion Kirby got? He's going to jump it off short to the fullback. Stays on his feet, though, and Steven Smith will go ahead and pick up a first down for the Air Force. As you see the stats for Colorado State versus Air Force on the first downs, bit on Colorado State early, but Jamal Jones, the tight end for Air Force, will find the end zone. And now we're just talking about a 1-score game. Matter of fact, later in the first half, they actually have a chance to tie this thing. Ben Kelly just lines up, and he finds his receiver downfield all the way into the end zone. Touchdown, Air Force. That is Orlando Jordan able to score for the Air Force. So a tie game at the half, but one game that is out of the halftime locker room, though, is Arizona State and Utah State. And that one is surprisingly a close game, so something to certainly watch out for. Now, for the second half of action, still a close game between Colorado State and Air Force, although Colorado State did end up chipping a field goal in during the course of the third quarter of action. Eric McBride, though, is going to run this ball into the end zone. That extends the lead up to 10 points. But look at this, another studio update provided. And in the fourth quarter, Utah State, they got a legitimate shot to win their very first game of the season. Imagine that, right? That is absolutely crazy to see. 24-14 your score now, as now looking over to the right hand side, looking for the tight end once again, Jamal Jones. Double trouble, and Air Force has the lead. They have a chance to win this game, get to 3-2. They just gotta deny this Colorado State offense one more time, because how Air Force is, it is an option attack with some different specifications so that they pass the ball a little bit more often. You know, it is 2023. You got to be able to know how to pass that football. If you don't, then, well, you're barbecue chicken in the modern college football era. That's just how it is. But Eric McBride, able to run the ball on the ground yet again, gives them the lead. And we'll see if Air Force has what it takes to come back. But first, we do get a studio update on a game with some implications within the Mountain West. Out in the Desert Division, Colorado and UNLV, well, they're going at it right now. But it does look like Colorado State does have what it takes to hang on and win. Air Force gave a pretty good performance offensively. Deion Kirby had them ready on the offensive side of the ball, but, you know, it was just not enough. It was not enough, unfortunately. And now we move on to Ohio State, the number 2 team in the country. They are on national television, taking on a conference opponent in Ball State. Ball State from that Hoosier division. They have not won a single game yet this season, so I would actually be shocked if this did not end up being a blowout. But we jump into this fourth quarter. Not only has Ohio State not run away with this game, surprisingly, they have a chance to make this a one-score game, and Ball State picking up the first down courtesy of Kyle Lloyd. Now looking at a goal line opportunity, and if Ball State finds the end zone, they are at home. Look out! Could be a possible upset of the century on our hands right now as James Jackson finds the end zone, and they will go for 2 as well, looking for 2-point conversion, make this a 3-point game. They actually convert it. They convert the 2-point conversion, and you want to talk about an eerie sign, an ominous sign, I should say. Utah State, they win their first game of the season against Arizona State, so does that mean Ohio State could come down? Well, not exactly. Robert Johnson will finish the deal. They run out some clock, make this a 2-score game. So, Ball State, I applaud them for making it interesting. This was very insightful to see. But Ball State now 0-6. They're very likely not going to go to a bowl game at all. As for LSU, they are taking on the Florida Gators, and, you know, Florida, they've fallen on hard times here in this Dynasty universe. You know, there was a time, you know, in the days of Urban Meyer and Tim Tebow, you know, one of the best programs in the country, and you can certainly cannot tell the college football story without the University of Florida, but maybe it's time to drain the swamp there over at Florida, because they're playing LSU here at home, and if Florida, you know, they don't win this game, they're 2-5. You know, 2-5 usually doesn't fly there down at the University of Florida, so something to certainly watch out for moving forward. But Florida down by 7. They have another shot in the red zone already, but another interception. Another red zone turnover. You simply cannot do that. And the crazy thing is, Paul Ferguson has been literally perfect, except when it comes into the red zone. Red zone, he just becomes literal dog doo-doo. And LSU has a chance to pull away here late in this first half. They'll look to try to find their way into the end zone here. And Anthony Williams, sure enough, will decide to scramble, and he will silhouette his way into the end zone. That's a touchdown for LSU, making it a 16-point lead, as Florida does have one more red zone opportunity. But again, another red zone turnover. That is 3 red zone turnovers that Florida had in the game. There's no flags either, and it becomes the second defensive touchdown for the LSU Tigers. They'll take a 26-3 lead into the halftime locker room. But here we are in the third quarter, though. Ferguson finally learns how to throw to not the LSU players. He learns how to throw to the Florida players in the red zone. They'll cut it down to a 10-point game for now, but Anthony Williams just has too much time in the pocket. Has a very clean pocket to work from. I could have done something in that pocket. I never even played college football at any point. Not at Division 1, 2, 3. You know, you get the point, right? But Anthony Williams is going to go ahead and scramble upfield, and he will find the end zone. That is a touchdown for the LSU Tigers. They'll make this a 16-point lead. Make it 17. But now, down to the last couple minutes of action here, you know, you already know what time it is. They could just run out the clock and, you know, get themselves out of here. No, this is college football. This is the one sport that we got where style points really do matter to a degree. So, and it's Florida. You know, they want to rub it in Florida's face. And Anthony Williams actually almost hurts himself here. He could have very well hurt himself there as Andre Ostrander, he gets his first sack of the day, but definitely some empty stats at this point. Still trying to run out that clock as they go to Jelani Williams on the ground, and that's a touchdown for the Tigers yet again. LSU wins big, 40-16 being your final score And Florida, there's a lot of uneasy questions to ask there about that Florida program now that they're 2-5. That being said, though, South Carolina comes out and takes on the number 19 ranked team in the nation, the Arkansas Razorbacks. South Carolina last week, they did end up playing against Georgia and losing to Georgia, now having to play a pretty considerably tough opponent in what is considered a non-conference game for the Arkansas Razorbacks, as Arkansas does have a 13-0 lead. Very defensive game, as there's quite an outpour, quite a downpour here in Arkansas, so definitely makes the conditions not favorable for the stylish of offense, the flashy offenses out there. Really is more of a ground and pound type of day, and when you know what's coming, generally it's a lot harder to come out and actually get consistent yardage when the defense for the most part knows what they're doing. In South Carolina, took them a while, but they do find the end zone. But speaking of finding that end zone, both of these teams have been doing it pretty regularly so far in this game, as UNLV trying to turn some heads right now. They got a 21-17 lead over an undefeated Colorado squad. So we'll definitely monitor that moving forward. But that being said, Arkansas dropping back the pass, looking over. Motley finds a receiver who is looking to find the end zone. Touchdown, Arkansas. Just trying to run out the rest of the clock, and Michael Motley makes an audible late and is going to be able to chuck it downfield. Touch to help Arkansas score there, and Arkansas will end up winning this game 23-6, which does also mean that South Carolina, well, they are riding a little bit of a losing streak right now. Meanwhile, in the 6 o'clock games, we got Arizona taking on Utah, while UAB is going to be taking on the 15th ranked Georgia Bulldogs in the 6 p.m. kickoff slate. First, we'll go ahead and kick it out west to watch Utah and Arizona go at it. Utah, they're just coming off a heartbreaking loss to Arizona State in overtime, whereas Arizona, I think they're a little bit better than what their record shows. This was a team that did compete against Michigan, didn't win that game, but they weren't exactly ran off the field either. So Arizona, they are a respectable team, even though they have a less than respectable record. So I'm really interested to see how this game goes. And matter of fact, Arizona, they have not only the lead, but they're going to extend this lead here before we go into the halftime locker room, it looks like, as Mark Flanagan, reading the eyes of Lily Bradford like a novel, and obviously that's his favorite novel when he's able to find his way into the end zone. But we do get yet another studio update from Colorado and UNLV, where the Buffaloes, well, they just retake the lead after UNLV recently took it. But now we go into the third quarter of action, and Arizona, they really take that momentum to halftime. So they got a really nice lead over Utah, but here comes the Utes, who are looking to avoid that 2-4 start here in the end this first half of the season. Now looking to make this just a one-score game. Bradford looks over to the left-hand side and finds his man in the corner of the end zone. Touchdown, Utes. And all of a sudden, it's a competitive game once again. Here comes Utah, firing again over to the right-hand side, and Utah has the lead here in the fourth quarter of action against Arizona. The mascot in the background, well, he absolutely cannot believe it right now. But before we finish off this game, we do get one more studio update on Colorado versus UNLV. And Colorado, they find a way to win 42-35 in an absolute shootout. The Buffaloes are still undefeated. However, that being said, 1:37 left to play in our game. Does Arizona have what it takes to manufacture a 2-minute drive? And it helps when you get a big play down the field. They still have all 3 of their timeouts, so they don't even really need to rush if they don't need to. Maybe they want to save those timeouts just in case they want to ice the kicker in the event that, okay, we only managed to get a field goal on this drive. But Arizona's probably thinking of something a little bit different. They're trying to go home. They're not trying to go to overtime on the road. And that's how you do it. Jason Davidson finding the back of the end zone. Touchdown, Wildcats. And now the pressure is on Utah. Less than a minute left. They can't score a field goal. They got to go to the end zone. Otherwise, this game will be over. No other options available. Does Utah have it? Last play of the game from the 30-yard line. It's either win or lose. Bradford throws it up, and it's caught! It's caught by Anthony Brooks, and Utah is going to be walking this one off. Touchdown, Utes! And just an incredible way to win this game. And for Arizona, you just got to feel for them. That hurts the soul. So let's see if UAB can do something similar and keep things close against that Georgia Bulldogs football team. Georgia coming off a pretty solid win against South Carolina, as we discussed earlier in the episode. While UAB, this is the first time that we've seen them on national television, but a decent team at 3-2, but they're not really showing that right now. But could make this a one-score game if they're able to punch their way into the end zone, but somehow that ball is fumbled on the ground. I don't know how that happened. I thought that guy was still on his feet. Must have been bashed out when he was trying to fight for those extra yards. And it was at that moment that I knew UAB was not going to win that game. So Georgia, they dominate UNLV relatively quickly, actually. 55-17 being your score. But now we get a triple box updates. We got multiple games going off around the country. We got the border wars between Missouri and Kansas. And we also have the Battle of the Heartland Trophy as well, which we'll check in first and foremost between Wisconsin and Iowa. Wisconsin coming off a win against the Texas Longhorns last week. But you want to talk about some shockers. Imagine if this score holds up, though. Texas State could pull off and dethrone the #1 team in the country. That would be absolutely wild. But what else is wild is that I don't know what happened to Iowa. Iowa, you know, I'm not saying that it's an elite program by any means, but I expected a little bit better than the 1-5 that I'm seeing on my screen right now. It's incredible how bad Iowa's been over the course of this season. And Zach Roberts, the Idaho State transfer, he'll find his way into the end zone. But look at this, guys. Texas State actually did it. They beat the Nittany Lions by a score. So we're going to see a new #1 team in the country whenever we do simulate over to week #8. So that's something to certainly watch out for. However, even though Wisconsin built that 28-3 lead, Iowa, they're not giving up yet. They're trying to creep their way back into this game. But the Badgers, in the Battle of the Heartland Trophy, they want to take that trophy home, not this Iowa squad. Plus, they want to get to over 500. That's a pretty good incentive as well. So Iowa's down by 20 all of a sudden. Curry trying to throw this pass off. He's actually going to be sacked in the backfield, though, by Xavier Anderson. And it's 3rd and 16 now. What does Iowa decide to do? Throwing up a ball over to the right-hand side. Decent yards, makes it a more manageable 4th down, but 4th and 8, it's not going to be easy. It really will not be easy at all. Gabe Curry needs a big play. Throws to the right-hand side, and not only is it a 1st down, but it's a touchdown for the Iowa Hawkeyes, as they will not go down quietly, but it will not be enough, though, to complete the comeback as Wisconsin hangs on. They will win the Battle of the Heartland Trophy. So now we'll check in on the border war between Missouri and Kansas. Kansas, you know, getting a little bit of love on national TV. Not the best squad, but, we've seen them a few times on national TV already, so you like to see that. Missouri, however, I think this is the first time that we've seen them on TV this season. I'm not exactly sure, or if they were on TV earlier this year, it was not really all that notable, but Missouri is a decent squad, number 23 in the entire country, but going to be in some trouble early here for the border war rivalry game, as Kansas does take a 13-0 lead into the halftime locker room. But in the second half, Missouri really starting to wake up. Their quarterback's going to scramble, and he'll find his way into the end zone. Actually, that gives Missouri what's supposed to be their first lead of the game, but they actually miss the extra point, and no other points happen, so they actually will go ahead and take this game into overtime. And in the overtime, Kansas, the first thing that they do, Chase Joseph's going to throw a costly interception. Just looking for that crosser over the middle. Never saw that safety, and therefore never really stood a chance. So now, all Missouri has to do is get some points in some shape or fashion. Doesn't have to be necessarily a touchdown, but They can walk it off here on the road. We'll see if Missouri does that. And sure enough, it looks like James Bryant is going to be walking it off for the Missouri Tigers, as it was a scary moment for them, down at 13 at one point, but remaining composed, they win the border war against the Kansas Jayhawks. Missouri gets to 4-2 after a 19-13 win over the Kansas Jayhawks here at night. As for USC, they got to go take on San Diego State in conference play, playing in a Pacific divisional matchup, not only in the Pac-12 conference, but in that Pacific division as well. USC, we'll see what they got, and they're doing USC things to start things out, or at least that's what it seems like, except Warren Williams makes a rare mistake. He gets intercepted, and look at this defensive lineman go. The hog molly refuses to go down until after he crosses the 30-yard line. We almost saw a big boy touchdown from Anthony McCoy. We don't quite get it though, but San Diego State does get a chance to take the lead, looks over the middle, and Nick Ross just finding that soft spot in the defense. USC is actually down by 8, so this San Diego State squad, they came to play and they're ready to fight for every single inch. Ryan Burley, though, has different ideas, though, sets USC up for a scoring opportunity, and Warren Williams, he'll find his way into the end zone. Touchdown, Trojans! And the Rose Bowl starts to come alive a little bit as they'll go for the 2-point conversion in order to tie this game up. Williams does find his receiver on the right-hand side, but it ends up being dropped. So now San Diego State, they still have the lead and the ball too, as they go over to the left-hand side, getting across midfield. Get those keys out, because the Aztecs, they are on a drive right now. Less than 40 seconds though. On the very next play, we get an interception, and it is a very devastating interception as well. Neil Johnson able to read him like a book, and now USC in the red zone. Last 30 seconds of the first half. They might punch it in here, especially since he managed to get out of bounds. Don't have to worry about rushing up to the line of scrimmage. They got some time, and showing that they got some time, they choose to run the ball, which might go up against that traditional grain, but that is going to be enough to give USC the lead going into the half. Now, that being said, 19-14 is your score here in the third quarter, as Warren Williams looking to scramble on the read option, as he did decide to keep it all himself, as Warren Williams has actually done a pretty good job running the ball today. Not really what he does typically, more of a passer, more than anything, and that's also showing too in this game. Just not the best of stat lines, only a touchdown and an interception, but doing enough to give a sizable lead. But this Aztec squad, man, there's just something about this team. They are determined, and that's just a thing about being one of the best teams, not only in the country, but in the entire conference as well. I probably got that mixed up, but y'all know what I mean. But every other team, when you go up against them, they're going to give you their very best shot that they are capable of playing, and they showed up ready to play. They really did. As we jump into this fourth quarter, a chance to make this just a one-score game, and sure enough, Ron Williams finds his way into the end zone. Could get very interesting. Just a 5-point game with less than 3 minutes left to play. Dropping back, fires over the right-hand side, finds his receiver down inside the 20-yard line, and the Aztecs with a chance to take the lead. Looking over the right-hand side, touchdown, Marco Douglas. Will they go for 2 or not? But either way, they have just taken the lead against the number 10 team in the entire country. And sure enough, they will go for that 2-point conversion. Dropping back, looks to the right-hand side and finds Thomas Davidson for the 2-point reception. So they don't need to go for a touchdown necessarily, but San Diego State, they can't lose on a field goal, so you're feeling really good about that. However, Trojans, they're already at midfield right now, so a couple more first downs, they could be in realistic field goal range. But Williams has other things in mind. He's going to take off again. Williams down the sideline is finally cut out of bounds at the 25-yard line, and it will set up a chance to win this game on an essential walk-off, and Williams does it. Williams does it completely untouched eventually. Warren Williams will give USC the lead with 12 seconds left. It's going to come down to this final play of the game. Going to just throw it as far as he possibly could. Overthrows everybody except the safety. And that is going to be your Johnny Ball game. USC, they were tested. They were put on the brink. But they find a way to win. And man, was it a close one. 33-29 is your final score. So a couple more games left in this episode, and one of them is Boise State taking on the BYU Cougars in a Mountain West battle. Boise State looking to get to 4-2 and be on good pace to make it to a bowl game here this year. But BYU is kind of an underrated college football environment, and they actually have one of the prettiest backdrops, I think, of any college football stadium in the country. So that's why I say that's certainly underrated from that aspect of things. So we'll see what happens with this Boise State and BYU game that we got going on right now. Still a close game here as we're getting into the closing moments of the first half, but Marvin Anderson, he's gonna run this ball into the end zone. That will help Boise State pull away to a degree, but they found a way to miss the extra point. Their kicker for Boise State is not good at all. He can barely make anything more than an extra point. His leg is that weak, so I'll be surprised if he's not like a walk-on kicker. I don't really go that deep into the depth charts necessarily, you know, for sim leagues like this. So but I would guess that he is a walk-on kicker for Boise State, but don't really need him today, at least not yet. Boise State's just got to run out this clock and they'll be a Johnny Ball game. But BYU is going to make it interesting here in the last couple of minutes of this football game, though, as we'll see an interception from Tony Kennedy. And now BYU with a chance to tie. 2:10 left to play. It's going to be a run up the gut first and foremost. After a first down by Oliver Murphy, it now turns into a red zone opportunity. 1:30 left to play. Dropping back, facing some pressure though as he goes to the right-hand side. He's going to be intercepted, and unless it's a penalty on the defense, this will be over. Most likely, it's going to be pass interference, but on the offense. It's going to be on the offense of all people, which does end up meaning that Boise State is able to run out the rest of his clock, and they do end up winning 22-15. But with our last game of the day of this episode, it's going to be one of the best that we got. I'm actually surprised that this was not a college game day episode. They actually end up going to LSU in Florida, which is, well, you saw Florida on the thumbnail, but this is the best game of this entire episode. Y'all already know I had to save it for last. California taking on UCLA, a top 10 matchup between two teams that are undefeated on the season. Only one of them will have to come out unscathed. Who is it going to be? And it looks like Cal, they're trying to be that team early on as they're going to be forcing a turnover on one of the first offensive plays of the game as Tony Warren's able to get that interception, but Cal can't do anything with it. They end up going 3 and out, and they also missed a field goal. But midway through the second quarter, look at the tomfoolery that we see here. This man was left dead to rights, but Brent Childress, I don't know how he did it, but he found a way to find his way into the end zone. I was surprised that he even got positive yardage off of that, but UCLA does take a 7-0 lead as they look to try to build upon that. And how about this? Let's go, man! Big time catch by Rob Townsend, and then to also come out and run with some authority after that. Absolutely crazy, man. That is, you didn't have to do him dirty like that. You really didn't. But UCLA with a 14-0 lead, and just as if Cal was getting ready to be ran off the field, got some lady luck as Ryan Jude just did not realize that his pitchman was completely covered. So sure enough, Cal is going to be right back into the game, only down by 1 score now. But UCLA, they have the football back, trying to move down the length of the field, but It's going to be intercepted yet again. Second interception thrown by Ryan Jude, who's really having a difficult game under the spotlight. This is the biggest game that UCLA has played in all season long. Cal has a little bit more experience with top 25 matchups, as they actually played a ranked Utah squad back in week number 2, but got some time to work with in the pocket. Cal is going to also throw an interception here. Definitely not a good day to necessarily be a quarterback. But here we are in the fourth quarter, though, and it's still a one-score game. Could go either way. Who's going to come out without a loss? It looks like UCLA is primed to do just that. They open up this lead 21-7, and the pressure is all on Cal. Dropping back, got all the time in the world, fires over the middle of the field, finds his receiver down the sideline. He's across the 30. He's going to be brought down just before the 25-yard line, but it's a 50-yard reception for Dusty Rice. Is now looking towards the right-hand side. It's caught! It's caught again by Dusty Rice into the back of the end zone. Touchdown, California. And that does make it a 21-14 lead. And now Cal, they got to get this ball into the end zone if they want to keep it going. Unfortunately, UCLA's defense gets to stop, and Cal will be leaving UCLA with their first loss of the year. So now that we got all the nationally televised games out of the way, let's go ahead now and take the chance to take a look at some other games that we might have missed because of that, either through watching other games on, nationally televised stage, or, in those studio updates. And Navy, how about this? The Navy midshipmen, they are undefeated still. They are now 5-0 on the season after a 42-28 victory over the Buffalo Bulls, and the midshipmen are now number 6 in the entire country. As for Texas A&M, they went on the road and had quite the battle against Oklahoma State, even though the Cowboys have had a disappointing season. However, Texas A&M prevails by winning 38-31, as the Texas A&M Aggies are now ranked in the top 10. Speaking of those top 25 teams, the Syracuse Orange, it took them a little bit, but finally getting some respect. They are now ranked in the top 25 as Syracuse. They beat Maryland 31-10. The Orange are undefeated at 6-0, and because of that, they are awarded with the number 19 overall ranking in the AP poll. As for the Army Academy, they are also in the top 25 as well, sitting at number 24, as they also had a challenge from James Madison, who the Duke started off strong in the first quarter, but still adjusting to the FBS style of football. As Army wins 33-21, the Dukes will fall to 1-4. Also in action was Nebraska Cornhuskers taking on Eastern Michigan in conference play. Nebraska was able to win 38-17, as they're now 5-1 on the season, which does net them a top 15 ranking. But now that we are halfway through the season right now, let's go ahead and take the chance to take a look at how's the conference standing shaking out. How are things going? And we'll start off with the Carolina division in the ACC, and all those teams still in it, as Charlotte and Wake Forest, they are the two teams that are undefeated in this part of the ACC conference, with teams like South Carolina, Virginia Tech, Clemson, and Appalachian State. They're all still in it as well, as they only have one loss apiece in conference play. So a division to watch out for right off the bat. As for the Commonwealth Division, not as much going on over here. North Carolina only playing in one conference game, but they are ahead with Old Dominion at 1-1. Virginia, Eastern Carolina, NC State, and the Duke Blue Devils, well, they're all still looking for their first conference wins of the season. As for the Frontier Division, a lot of very good talent in the Frontier Division, at least a very competitive division. Kansas State, Nebraska, who's ranked at the top 15. Iowa State, who should be ranked, along with Missouri. They're all tied for first place as of right now. We got a 4-team race in the Frontier Division. As for the Lake Division, Central Michigan actually is leading the way and has a pretty solid lead over the rest of this particular division. Central Michigan with a very solid season, and while they're not ranked in the top 25, they are receiving votes as of right now. So then this takes us into the Alamo Division for the Big 12 Conference. And for the Alamo Division, a four-way tie ensues. UTEP, who is 4-1, they've been a pleasant surprise alongside the Baylor Bears at number 13, Texas A&M, and Rice. You know, that's what it just goes to show. Don't play with your food, because Rice, they're in the win business and conference play early on. UTSA is also in the mix for now, as they're 1-1 in conference play. Meanwhile, on the other side is the Lone Star Conference, and as of right now, TCU leading the way at the moment with that 2-0 conference record. Oklahoma is right on their heels themselves with that 2-1 conference record too, and Texas Tech, you certainly can't count them out either, even though they were a former top 25 team. Of course, we have the Big Ten Conference moving over to the Buckeye Division, and Ohio State, unsurprisingly, is leading the way. They are undefeated and ranked number 4 in the country, but teams like Kent State, Cincinnati, and Akron could mix some things up here, as they all have just one loss here in the early goings of conference play. It's very early and too early to call it for sure. As for the Hoosier Division, which, side note, I know I need to change the name here because Hoosier is misspelled, and that's just a bot move on my part. Either way, though, this should be a more competitive conference, as Michigan, Michigan State, and Miami, well, they're all tied with a 2-0 conference record, with Purdue with the potential of possibly making some noise as well. They're 1-1 in conference play. As that takes us now to the Colonial Division within Conference USA. Navy and Temple essentially tied for first place. Navy, of course, getting a whole lot more love, and then Temple, well, they're 2-0 in conference play as of right now, and they're a team that's also been very surprising, could very well make it to a bowl game if they can find a way to win 2 or 3 more games throughout the season. Texas State also in the mix, and actually just pulled the upset on the number 1 team, or at least former number 1 team in the nation. And then, of course, we have the Union Division with Syracuse in here, just getting into the top 25. Pittsburgh should be ranked. They're not right now, but they are receiving top 25 votes as well, so they both have 2-0 conference record. Also, look out for Penn State. They are coming in as a big favorite, but they just took their first loss in conference play. Then Army's only conference loss comes to Navy out of the Colonial, so they're well within it as well. Taking a quick look at the independents, and the 2 independent schools are doing relatively well. They're both 4-3 on the season. Over in the Blues Division, which comprises of teams from Tennessee and Kentucky, how about this? Western Kentucky leading the way right now, 3-3 with a 2-1 conference record, alongside Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt also has the lead here too. Mid-Tennessee State, they're also a half game behind, just a couple of games away from possibly being bowl eligible. They're sitting at 4 wins right now. And then 2 teams who I thought that were going to do better in Louisville and Kentucky, well, that just hasn't happened yet. They're 1-2 in conference play, with Tennessee in dead last. And then, of course, we have the Great Lakes Division in the MAC Conference. West Virginia, even though they've had a disappointing season thus far, but still leading their division right now. They're sitting at 2-0 unscathed, as they did pull the upset off on Notre Dame. That will help them out greatly. 2 other teams to watch out for possibly is Northwestern, who is 3-2 in conference play, and then Northern Illinois doing some good stuff as well, 3-2 overall on the season. But then we go out west, where we find the Desert Division within the Mountain West Conference, and this conference right here got some hidden talent. Colorado being one of those teams, 5-0 with a 3-0 conference record. They just now have entered into the top 25 as well, so you love to see that. UNLV was the team that they recently played. They took their first conference loss, but pretty good football team. They're better than that 79 overall. Certainly has shown so far, with Arizona State, New Mexico, Air Force, and Arizona. Well, all these other teams to be determined on how they can compete in this division as well. Meanwhile, in the Mountain Division, we got Boise State leading the way with a 2-1 conference record, alongside Utah, who's tied alongside them as well. Colorado State is in the mix, so that's 2 teams from the state of Colorado that is doing pretty sound here in the Mountain West Conference. Also, something to keep an eye on is Utah State. They just won their first game of the season. They are 1-2 in conference play as well, and are just one game out in spite their really slow start. But now we go into the Pac-12, and it is a gauntlet over there in the Pac-12 right now. Oregon and Washington are tied. They're two teams that are ranked in the top 10. California, they just took their first loss of the season, not only in conference play, but overall, they're still a top 15 squad as well that can still make a lot of noise. Meanwhile, in the Pacific Division, just as gracious of a fight right now, UCLA, they are the new #1 team in college football. USC is going to be pretty good too. They're in the top 10. San Diego State, they are actually a low 90s overall team. I did not know that, but they are 2-1 with more to be determined from the Fresno State Bulldogs. So just two more conferences to cover, the SEC and the Sun Belt. First, we go over to the SEC where we find the Peach Division. And right now, we got Georgia Tech with the lead as of today. They only played one conference game, so they have to play the rest of their conference slate. Georgia has looked pretty dominant. They just blew the doors off of UAB. And speaking of teams that Georgia has played and won, Georgia State and UAB, their only conference losses are to Georgia, but they are well within the mix as well. So is Coastal Carolina and the Georgia Southern Eagles. And then in the Sunshine Division, we got the Miami Hurricanes, who, in my opinion, should be ranked #1 in the nation, but the AP poll does disagree, but they do have a 2-0 conference record. USF, also a solid squad that could chase Miami. They are just one game out right now, here at the halfway point here in the Sunshine Division. And the last conference is the Sun Belt Conference, and we first check out the Bayou Division. Arkansas is 4-1 in conference play and will look to finish the second half of this season strong. LSU and Arkansas State, they are both teams that are hot on their heels right now, as is Louisiana Tech, who can certainly sneak up on some people. They need a strong finish if they want to go bowling here in year #1. And finally, we got the Dixie Division in the Sun Belt Conference. Ole Miss, very impressive here in the first half of the season. Already confirmed to go bowling at 6-1. Plus, they're undefeated in conference play. They are going to look to pull away from the rest of his conference here. So that will wrap things up here in week #7 of the NCSL within College Football Revamp. I truly hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you enjoyed the fact that we are already halfway through the inaugural college football season of the NCSL. I hope you enjoyed what you have seen so far, and if you want to continue to rock with this series and see this community grow, I need you guys to do a couple of things for me. Go ahead and smack that like button, slap it for me. I would truly appreciate that. That does help me out the YouTube algorithm. And then also hit that subscribe button as well if you do have to be brand new to the channel. This is John J. Gaming on the mic signing off. Hoping you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.